If your personal life story includes a dramatic retelling of how darkness came against you personally because you are so anointed, I'm going to start asking some questions. If I've already lost you, that's okay. But if you're willing to hang with me, I think this might help. Because as it turns out, darkness itself is an expert at spinning a narrative. Every dark thing is really another version of a spin doctor. Spin doctors are really people that are given a narrative that isn't so great, and they're told to spin it a little bit and see if they can make it a little bit more believable, palatable, or even enjoyable. And beyond the spiritual realm, we live in a narrative-driven age. The stories that we tell ourselves matter deeply, and so do their outcomes. And these outcomes are filled with things like, God didn't come through for me. I couldn't withstand the darkness. Life is confusing. These narratives of powerlessness and fear are pervasive, when in reality, the narrative that you tell matters. You see, if you are the center of your own story, here's the thing, then everything that happens to you is a grave issue, and it has everything to do with you. And of course, it would have everything to do with you because you are the center of the world. And so then when something bad comes and happens, the spin doctor enters the room and starts to tell all these stories about the story that happened to you. But here's the thing, when Jesus comes and makes himself the center of the story, the best thing that can happen to you is what happens next. Because then your story, your pains, and your sacrifices become attached to the nuclear power that can make them all worth something. You know, I see this quite a bit in our age and in our narrative, right? Let's just pull it back a little bit. We live in an age where the layers that are hiding the darkness around us have been forcefully peeled back. There is nothing hidden that won't be brought into the light. And in that forceful bringing forth, darkness itself is being disturbed. Seeing spiritually often does something the darkness doesn't want. It exposes the fruitless works of darkness and brings them into the light. If you believe that seeing, perceiving, discerning, and exposure does nothing, then you may need to know that bringing something forward often is the thing that neutralizes its power. You see, many deliverance ministries in particular boast of their power over principalities based off of what comes forward. But unfortunately, a lot of these ministries, in my experience, are just entertained by darkness. I've seen often that a smaller entity will often give a false name. And while such a small entity does need removal, it often mostly just needs exposure. And genuine powers and principalities often thrive on secrecy, which is why I have hit so much resistance as I've written about them. Most true powers and principalities do not want to be seen, and they move slowly and quietly. Principalities will spin stories in very unlikely ways, and I see this a lot in Europe. Power, old institutions, older than centuries, do not want to be seen, and often a power will send a lower power in its place, carrying an authority that it may or may not have. Genuine principalities are spin doctors. They are masterminds of written history. They are rewriters of narratives over nations, and they rewrite truth. And so when you come to me with a big story about your ministry's so-called power over darkness and a narrative of your personal suffering and how that meant that you have some power, I prick up my ears. Because your ministry has no power. But I know someone whose ministry has all the power. Hebrews 1 says that the earth is his footstool. And so until I hear how Jesus is moving, I am not interested in your narrative. Hey there, I'm Mary. I write and speak on the spiritual realm, but only with Jesus. I am very interested in what he is doing. If you're interested too, I'd invite you to hit the subscribe and follow button. I would love to have you be a part of what Jesus is doing. Let's find out together.